If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast, do subscribe as well. Leave a review. I am very honoured to have with me Ian Lavery. My cat is attacking the camera. Let's see how far we get through without the... This did happen mid-interview once, Ian. Cat just threw the camera on the floor. It was hugely embarrassing. How are you doing, Ian?
I'm very well in terms of health. Looking forward to getting through this dreadful COVID pandemic. Looking forward to having proper meetings and discussions and seeing people who I haven't seen for probably over 14 months. And, it's always better, Owen, not just with your friends, but with your enemies as well, to be able to see the colour of the eyes when you're discussing different things. So I'm looking forward to having like a meeting with people around the table where we have proper discussions, and I don't think that's too far away. So as far as that's concerned, fantastic. Politically, well, it would be wrong of me to say that I'm like absolutely delighted, because it's quite the opposite.
Let's start with that. I'm going to start. Right. Let's go straight in. I'm going to ask you just a very straightforward question. Keir Starmer stood on a platform including 10 pledges, which were the radical domestic policies of the Corbyn era, for unity, electability, competence. Did he lie to the Labour membership?
Well, let we be absolutely frank with each other, because if we cannot be honest with each other, then we need to pack in. And the reality is, when Keir stood, he had that 10-point plan, 10 pledges, and one of them was unity. And forgive me for saying this, I know I'm from the northeast, and I've been proud to follow the miners' banners and the trade union banners all my life. Unity is strength, and united we stand, divided we fall. These slogans are so important. That was, in my view, the main point in Keir's 10-point plan. Keir promised unity. He promised that he understood that the party was fractured and we needed to come together, everyone, in order to put the party in line to win the next general election in 2024, as people saw at the end. It might be a lot earlier, in my view. And that just hasn't happened, I'm afraid. Keir, and you've got a question, is it Keir? Is it the people in his office? Is it Lotto? Is it Mandelson? Is it Blair? Who on earth is running the Labour Party at this moment of time? And it's a huge concern. But Keir, at the election, obviously he had to have some form of connection with the Corbyn left. And the 10-point plan looked pretty exciting. It looked as if we could stomach that. But Keir hasn't stuck to his 10-point plan. I'm afraid he's went back over. And the party, in my view, now, and not just the PLP, not just the CLPs, not just the membership, are more divided now than they have been for quite some time. A lot of people feel really let down. And, as of what's happened in the past few weeks, for example, people are saying, what on earth do we stand for? What does Keir stand for? Where is he? He's invisible. Where is the Labour Party? Who are the Labour Party? Who's making the decisions? What are the policies anymore? And the big question is, what are we going to do going forward? Because we cannot just keep navel gazing. We cannot just keep arguing among ourselves, looking to see who can be expelled next, which CLP should be expelled, who from the officials running the CLPs can be the next on the list, who can be led back in the party. What about the Ford inquiry? What about the report with regards to the internal wranglings within the party? We've got to try and move on. We've got to stand for something. We went into Hartlepool, Owen. We went into Hartlepool last week, and people were frightened and knocked on doors because they weren't sure what we actually stood for anymore. If we keep doing that, we'll never, ever get power.
When you look at those results last week, when you see the results, Hartlepool, across, there was the worst local election results of a new opposition leader for 40 years. But also, Labour did make progress in other places in the country. I'm thinking of Salford, I'm thinking of Preston, I'm thinking of Manchester under Andy Burnham, actually. So what does that tell us? What does that tell us about where Labour went backwards? And it's only the third time in the last 50 years that an opposition party has lost a by-election to the government. But what does it tell us about the other results as well, as far as you're concerned?
Well, it's quite simple. It's not rocket science, and that is, in the places you mentioned, in Wales is a great example. Wales, in Salford, in Manchester, in Liverpool, all these areas where you've got good, solid leadership, clear vision of the future, some proper narrative of where we are and where we want to be, and delivered properly via the leadership structures. We haven't got that nationally. We haven't got that nationally. And of course, what's really important is the policies which they are pursuing, the left of centre. And that's what people want to hear. Never mind what people are saying about the policies in 2017, 2019, that they were just a bag of goodies that people said we couldn't deliver. We can deliver most of those policies. They've got to be delivered properly. We've got to have the right message, and that's what big failure at national level. What do we stand for, Owen? And what Kier actually did very early on, the new slogan, away from not the many, not the few, which was an all electorate embracing slogan. It was a brilliant slogan. It still is, but now it's under new leadership. What that means is, I'm not Jeremy Corbyn. But so what? People aren't interested in Kier telling people he's not Jeremy Corbyn, because he could take a few leaves out of Jeremy Corbyn's book, couldn't he? I mean, then that's another subject, of course. But it's about messaging. In Wales, the way that they've gained seats and they've maintained different constituencies, brilliant under Mark Drakeford. And then you've got, the likes of Andy and Steve and others, and you've got Salford, as you mentioned. They've got policies, like re-nationalising the buses, for example. I remember when Jeremy Corbyn actually went to PMQs to talk about the bus system in this country, and he was laughed at through the press. Look what it's done, the likes of Andy Burnham's patch. People love it. People love progressive policies, which make a big difference to them. And that's the difference. The difference is people standing up for ordinary people, people understanding what they're saying and recognizing how we can change their lives, and having trust, because again, that's a massive thing, having trust in the leadership. But it's about the leadership getting out there, being seen, saying the right things, what they say are being understood by the electorate, and that's the only way we can achieve success. It's happening in these areas. It isn't happening nationally, I'm afraid.
Keir Starmer moved to sack Angela Rayner as party chair in the aftermath of the results. He actually planned a wider reshuffle as well, which didn't happen. What's your take on that?
Well, it wasn't a reshuffle, was it? To be honest with you, it was a mini reshuffle. And I think at that point in time, you've got to question whose decision it was to have a reshuffle on the Saturday night at that particular point in time, and particularly focus on Angela Rayner, particularly focus on Angela as the chairperson and as the national campaign coordinator. Both positions, by the way, which I've held within the Labour Party, both positions which are very difficult indeed. But to move Angie, basically sack Angie, that's my take on it. Angie was sacked. There was a big kickback, a big blowback by lots of ordinary people, lots of people within the party, lots of people in the communities, supporters of Labour, couldn't believe that the leader of the party, who said quite robustly in front of the cameras that day that he would take responsibility for what happened in Hartlepool, to basically sack a northern working class female who was associated with the trade union movement, who had come up living in a council estate under being a carer, and had experiences of the seats like Hartlepool, which other people haven't had. And I just think it was a huge miscalculation. Now you've got to wonder, Owen, you've got to wonder whether this was Keir's decision. If it is, I'm frightened for the future. If it was the decision of people in his office, his advisors, I'm even more afraid of the future, because it was such a bad decision to make. And what we're hearing from the Sunday papers was that the leaks from the Sunday papers was that he was going to move a whole number of people, but he didn't. He rode back, withdrew this huge reshuffle, but he got Rachel Reeves into where he wanted. He got Annalise Dawes into the chair's position. And very few other than that. Valerie Vaz was sacked, who I thought was doing an excellent job as shadow leader of the House. But it wasn't a reshuffle. This was an attack on Angela Rayner, and the withdrew, the rode back. They were extremely concerned at what the general public and other people were saying, and they seen it as an attack on a northern woman who was basically thrown under the bus by Kier and his team, when really Kier should be taking the responsibility of what happened at Hartlepool.
So what do you think the direction is going to be of the leadership in the coming weeks? And I think a lot of people think or suspect, not just whether they're on the right or the left, that there's going to be an attempt to further marginalise the left, whether it be through the new chief whip, finding reasons to withdraw the whip from left-wing MPs, whether it be trying to change the leadership rules to stop anyone on the left ever being able to get the nominations in order to enter the contest in the future, whether it be or giving the MPs the whip hand again in terms of who the leader is, just even if they're in the contest, make it virtually impossible for them to win. Institutionally changing the Labour Party to shut down democratic processes. Do you think that's likely? And if so, what on earth does the left do? Because I think a lot of people might look at the left in Parliament and think very fragmented, no strategy, not united. They're going to get absolutely battered by an offensive against them.
When I've been a member of Parliament for 11 years, trade union representative for all my life, and being on the left, you would expect to get battered. You get battered all the time because you want big change and you're never happy. If you're not getting battered, you're not doing your job properly. If you're not getting attacked by the bosses, if you're not getting attacked by those in power, then quite frankly, you're not doing your job properly. You've got to be up for that. You've got to, at times you get battle weary, by the way, but you've got to pick yourself up, dress yourself down, and understand quite clearly that it never ever in your lifetime will you ever achieve what you want to achieve. You achieve some victories. Once you achieve them, you've got to fight like mad to ensure that you keep those, those advances, and you've got to fight like mad to make sure that you continue to try and progress the lives of the people who you proudly represent. Getting battered shouldn't be a problem. You should expect it. What will Kier do? Well, Kier, in my view, when you're heading in the wrong direction, which I think Kier is doing, it's time to stop. It's time to put the brake on, park up, and look at the options available. Look at the fork in the road. Look at the avenues that you must take. Because if you keep heading forward, you'll enter no man's land and you'll become utterly lost. So Kier really has got a huge decision, critical decision, and it's critical for the future of the Labour Party on whether he wants to revert back to what he promised everyone when he stood for the election of the Labour Party, the leader of the Labour Party. His 10 points talk about unity. Whether he wants to listen to what Peter Mandelson is saying. And by the way, I should have mentioned that in the reshuffle, Nick Brown was moved. Nick Brown was a fantastic whip unifying whip. He tried to do whatever he possibly could. And to move Nick Brown was a bit of a signal that he wanted someone else in. And it also was a bit of a signal that the hands of Mandelson were on this reshuffle and other things which is happening at this moment in time. So Keir's got a critical decision to make. And it's either unity or trying to destroy what we've got left in the left of the party, right from the soft left to the left of the party. And I think that's what he should be looking at, because, whether we like it or not, we've got some fantastic policies from 2017, 2019. We didn't get it right at the election. I was a joint national campaign coordinator and chairman. I did my very, very best. I promised everybody that I did my very, very best. And I apologise for the situation we ended up with. It's not for the want of trying, but at the end of the day, we did have a lot of fantastic policies. That's sure now, because the Tories are stealing our clothes. They were laughing at our policies in 2019, yet they've adopted a good few of them, including the Wi-Fi for all sort of thing. How beneficial could that have been to everybody across society, from the top businessman to the little kid in the street with running through the COVID pandemic, keeping them connected to where they need to be connected to, education-wise, etc. So Keir's got this decision to make. And he's been listening to everyone. Everybody's been very clear. But it is interesting, isn't it, that Tony Blair's back on the scene, attacking Keir, actually. Mandelson, who's advising him, is attacking him as well. So Keir needs to sit back and think the best way forward for the Labour Party. And the only way forward is in a position of strength, a position of unity. Unity is strength, Ewan. Unity is strength.
That said, if the Labour leadership decides, not that keen on unity, actually quite like to just smash, not just, as you say, the left, the soft left, in favour of the right of the Labour Party, in favour of Peter Mandelson, who I have a huge amount of evidence is doing extensive work on behalf of the Labour leadership, whether that's through Kier Starmer or his chief of staff, who is very close personally to Peter Mandelson and indeed ran Liz Kendall's Blairite leadership campaign. I'm sure she'd be happy with that description, so that's factually fine, back in 2015. If that doesn't happen and they say, well, actually, we prefer to marginalise the left over party unity, I spoke to your colleague, your comrade, your very good friend, John Trickett, a few days ago, and he suggested that the left should consider a leadership challenge if there isn't a change in direction, and if that is the course that Keir Starmer and his team have set upon. What do you think about that?
Well, I wouldn't disagree with the fact that if Keir decides, it is a critical point that the only way forward for the Labour Party is to, keep hammering people like myself, people like John, people in the Socialist Campaign Group. If it's his intention as a leader just to continue to hammer people within his own party, then you'll see the demise of the Labour Party, let me tell you. Well, you cannot continually beat the CLPs, the working members, the supporters, the officials who do work on behalf of the party every single day of the week. They stuff the envelopes, the telephone canvas. They get out there and knock on people's doors. They engage people in conversation. And the MPs who are in the Socialist camp. You cannot keep battering these people and then at elections saying, well, we want you to support us. That's what happened in the likes of Hartlepool. So, as I say, Keir's got this decision to make, and there's always murmuring behind the scenes about the potential for a leadership challenge. And I'm not going to say anything other than that murmurings now. And it's interesting, by the way, the information and the people who are talking about this aren't necessarily members of the Socialist Campaign Group, aren't necessarily members of any particular faction. It's people who would generally be seen in the PLP who are in the centre, because Keir promised. He promised to be the captain who could guide the ship, the tanker, in the right direction, turn it around, drive it into the middle of the electorate and tell them what we stood for, and Labour is on its way to victory. That's what Keir promised. He hasn't promised that. What he has done since he's been elected is basically, and I'll take your point, by the way, is it him? Is it his officials in Lotto? But he spent 14 months attacking the people who we really should be supporting if we are indeed serious to win an election. Well, let me just say this: the PLP, you've got the left, soft left, and the left in the PLP, and you've got the right wing in the Labour and the PLP, and you've got a whole array of people in the middle. Most of them are fantastic people, really good MPs. But they're the people that now are wondering whether or not that Keir is this wonderful captain that can turn the tanker around. And judging by his performances, there's a lot of people questioning whether they actually got it right in the first place. So it'll be interesting. People are always talking about future leaders. Listen, MPs being MPs, there's lots of people think they should be the leader of the Labour Party and think that that God's gift to politics. That's what MPs generally think, I'm afraid, with notable exceptions. But that's always these discussions. I generally think that the attacks on Keir, potentially a leadership campaign, would be from the right of the party. And the right of the party is much more brutal and much more ruthless than the centre left and the left of the Labour Party. So discussions are taking place. Whether they'll mount to anything, I'm not sure. A number of people, lots of people are like just saying, right, okay, we've got Batley in Spain, probably sometime in July. Wait, we'll see what the results of Batley in Spain actually are, because it's going to be really difficult in Batley in Spain, which is another issue which you might want to discuss. But a lot of people are like, I always set hurdles and challenges very early on, and up till now, I think Keir's failed on most counts.
I mean, just on Batley in Spain, I mean, Hartlepool, the Brexit party had a bigger share of the vote, although not as big a share of the vote actually as UKIP did in 2015, and then Labour's share of the vote went up drastically in 2017. But in 2019, there was a big Brexit party vote. Batley in Spain, much smaller, and it's a more diverse community in which, for example, there's a big Muslim community who are known traditionally to be very supportive of the Labour Party. So on that basis, people think it's less likely to be lost, although it's only got a small majority of about 3,500. Not that caveat aside, if Labour loses in Batley and Spen, which would, just so everyone is very clear, double the number of by-elections lost by an opposition to the governing party in the last 50 years within the space of a few weeks. So I think we'd all agree that's pretty bad. If that happened, will that be the end of Keir Starmer's leadership? And how likely do you think it is? You're an MP, you knock on doors, you talk to people in your community. Obviously, it's not Batley and Spen, but you get a feel of what might be going on. You hear lots of other people talking about it. What's your sense on all of those things?
Well, let's just say, Keir seems to have already burnt his bridges with huge sections of the party, whether that be CLPs or whether that be the PLP. So he's set himself a bit of a target on his back, really, with Batley in Spain. And as you say, if we lose Batley in Spain, that'll be unbelievably poor from the leadership's point of view. But we've got to enthuse people. When we went into Hartlepool, we shouldn't forget that there's still lots of people in the likes of Hartlepool who support the Labour Party that just didn't come out to vote. I'm seeing no reason to come out to vote because of the way that people in Hartlepool have been tread by the Labour Party, the imposition of a former MP who had lost the election in 2019, just next door in his seat because of his stance on Brexit. That's my view. Why would we have an imposition of a former MP with those views in Brexit heartlands? And it's just incredibly bad decision making, whoever made that decision. Why would we impose it against the wishes of basically the CLP and the one man long list, one man short list imposition? Bam, you're in there. Absolutely incredibly poor politics. And look at the fact that in 2000, let's think 2017, I think it was 2017, we had 21,000 voters supporting the Labour Party. 2019, I think we had around about 15,000 people getting out there to vote for the Labour Party. In 2021, we had just above 8,000. It's a Labour Party members, Labour Party voters who have been, who have withdrawn from support for the party, and you've got to ask the question why. That's why it's important that battling in Spain, you must have a local candidate, a champion, should have a working individual, somebody with a track record, somebody who's worked in that community, for heaven's sake. We cannot just keep pushing people in from wherever because somebody in Lotto might like them. We've got to make sure that we've got a local candidate, community champion, somebody who's delivered in that community, and there we stand a much, much better chance. A key worker, wouldn't it be fantastic to have a key worker selected in Hartlepool? If we don't win, in Batley in Spain, if we don't win Batley in Spain, I think there'll be severe repercussions, and people will be generally looking at the political situation within the party, and it'll not just be murmurings about a leadership challenge. I think there'll be manoeuvres and strong manoeuvres to challenge the leader. And that's not a threat. It really isn't a threat, by the way. It's called politics. In fact, it's simple politics. That's what happens. I remember when I was in as one of Jeremy's 5-star generals, when Jeremy first was elected to the leader, the hurdles people put in front of Jeremy, including the by-elections. There was a by-election after 9 months, I believe, and they said if Jeremy loses this, he's finished, and he should be, because he's a disgrace, and because we should be 20 points clear in the polls. All of this sort of stuff. The shoes on the other foot now. Politics it's a brutal business, It really is a brutal business. And we've got to step up to the plate. We've got to make sure that we win Batley in Spain. And I'll be there campaigning, by the way, for whoever the candidate might be, because I want to see a Labour victory.
Just finally, I know this is something you're very passionate about. Labour was founded over 100 years ago to be the party of the working class, party of Labour. There were two parties of capital, the Liberals and the Conservatives. The unions, as well as a coalition of other groups, socialists, came together in order to give Labour a political voice that they were denied. Now, obviously, the working class has changed in composition very dramatically. When Labour was founded, many working class people worked as personal servants. There was a huge mining industry, shipbuilding industry, manufacturing. These days, people are more likely to work in supermarkets and call centres for the delivery type economy, for in offices, and that goes. A lot of younger people who, for some reason, are excluded. Anyone under the age of 40 is often excluded from being working class. Apparently, being a young person who they might be renting their own home. They might be working in a precarious job, but apparently, no, not working. So obviously the working class has changed in composition. I think that's very important. People are working class if they're a black woman working in a supermarket in Hackney as much as they are if they're a 55-year-old ex-steel worker in the Midlands. But with all of that complexities aside, is the Labour Party still the party of the working class?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I still call myself big style working class one, and I think you might have been referring to me if you ever said somebody of that age would be in a former miner. Is he still working class? I see myself as working class. It's interesting, isn't it? Over the last few years, there's been a huge debate about what working class and who actually is working class. You know what? You're not if you're working class. You shouldn't need to try and prove it to anybody. You're not if you're working class. You're not about what sort of privileges or otherwise you had when you were brought up. What sort of schools you went to. You know how your parents managed. You know how your family managed. What your dad and your mom and your family did in terms of employment. You know what sort of people you mixed with and what their views were. That if you lived in poverty or if you had the privilege. So that's a great debate at this moment of time. And by the way, it's not just this moment of time. It's a great debate, and always has been, about who's working class. Because if anybody says to me, Ian, you're not working class, you've got a salary of £82,000 as an MP, I would go mad, because I am, and I'll never ever be anything other than working class. I think it was John McLean, the Red Clydesider, who said, "Rise with your class, not out of it." And I think that's really important. We see people who are really successful entrepreneurs right across the world who say they started with nothing, rags to riches, and they treat their workforce like absolute rubbish, like dog's muck on the bottom of their shoes. You also see people who have made good. I'll say made good. The likes of MPs in the Commons who've had the same sort of upbringing as perhaps I did, and they rightly so claim to be working class. We've got people in the legal profession, accountants, all have had difficult upbringing, and all are still, in my view, right to call themselves working class. It's great to have the debate, by the way. It really is. But you mentioned, the black worker working in Asda, for example, as opposed to somebody who might have been working, getting their hands dirty, getting their fingers broken in heavy industry. They're working people. They're all working people, and we've got a vast array of working class people right across the globe. And we've got to recognise that these are the people who made the party, who built the party, and should never, ever, ever be forgotten. Being working class can mean many different things. But let me just tell you, being working class is here. It's in the heart, Owen. If you're working class, if you're kidding people to tell people for whatever reason, you're working class. It's in the heart, man. It's where you come from. It's how you've been brought up. And it's how we develop your thoughts and your thought processes in the future. Rise with your class, not out of it. I think that's a great saying. And that's the way I would like to sum it up.
Very eloquent, Ian. Really, really appreciate that. That was great stuff. And I know everyone watching and listening will have learned a huge amount. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very much.